As Trump takes office in 2025, is the deep state preparing to stage a massive alien hoax to derail Trump and take power? Now, Trump himself doesn't seem very interested in UFOs, but John Ratcliffe, set to become CIA director, has openly pushed for government disclosure. You might remember when he dropped a bombshell on Fox News, hinting that the Pentagon report would reveal a lot more UFO sightings than we've been told. Now, I'm not saying Ratcliffe has bad intentions, but once disclosed, the deep state could weaponize that disclosure, staging a fake alien invasion to stop Trump and control the masses. Stay tuned, we will be covering new information that the deep state has desperately tried to hide from the public. Okay, LA, when I got a hold of your book, I was like, wow. Okay, rungs of disclosure and following the trail of extraterrestrials and the end times. There's so much information. I mean, that book, it's got like your research for a zillion years. It's over the top. And so we're going to be offering that with the 10 DVD set of UFO Disclosure. But I want to say this. I mean, you're sounding the alarm. Yes, you're sounding the alarm, but I had to have you back on. And there's a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about that we haven't discussed, but I had to have you back on because I'm going to read an article that I read. It's very recent. I'm like, oh my goodness, they are about to play this card that you've been talking about. And you're sounding the alarm because everyone has to know it. You've got to tell other people. In fact, please subscribe to this channel and please share this interview because it's now. There's a reason why even LA, I believe your book came out now. But I mean, it's like, okay, military and civilians seeing giants appearing and disappearing, the 2024 Super Bowl predictive programming. I mean, controlled information from news outlets and movies. And you discuss that with all of the rungs, but there's so much more in that book. And you have inside information that I didn't, I mean, I knew you had inside information, but not like this. So, okay, is it all right with you if I just read this article? This is when I saw this article and then got a hold of your book. I was like, that's it. Got to have you on now because something's up and something's about to happen. So, and then I'll be quiet and let you talk.
No, it's fine. Go for it.
Okay. Well, this is an article from in October, recent article from the Express, and it says Professor Simon Holland says he has seen evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence in the galaxy. It could be confirmed within weeks. Okay, this is in the middle of October. He has extensive experience in collaborating with NASA. He's convinced he has groundbreaking revelations regarding aliens. And he said, we have found a non-human extraterrestrial intelligence in our galaxy and people don't know about it. But this was the kicker. I was like, oh. And then it says in this article, Mark Zuckerberg's Breakthrough Listen project have tipped him off that there could be news breaking within a month. So that was in October, potentially timed with the US election. What that told me is this is a card that they're going to use when they need to use it. If they don't use it with the election, they figure out another time that they have to play this card, suggesting concrete evidence of alien life. I mean, something's up even more than ever before.
And look, I concur. This is I've been banging this drum as you said for 30 years, whatever. A lot of the time it falls on deaf ears. I've actually been kicked out of several churches because of talking about this. It upset a lot of people, and I get that. And it's the deep end of the pool. It's not for the faint of heart. But Jesus warns us. Jesus warns us that even the elect would be deceived. Why would he say that? Jesus warns us that men will faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. And that's a broad statement. So what could that mean? Could mean a mile-wide asteroid. I mean, I understand that. So it's either an asteroid or one of these things coming down. And I think it's this all day long. This is what's manifesting. So it's actually not either or, it's actually both and, because we know Apophis and other interstellar bodies or whatever are flying by the planet all the time. But this is the game changer. This is the game changer because it goes right along with the neo-Darwinists who insist that we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. encompassing, all-encompassing paradigm is called panspermia. That all life was seeded here from an advanced race of extraterrestrials. So the neo-Darwinists are already on board with that because they realize that the Darwinian theory just doesn't hold water because of the discovery of DNA. They realize that the discovery of DNA is a very, very complex system, complex coding system, and that DNA doesn't really evolve. I mean, mutations are usually very negative when they happen. Yes, now we can go in CRISPR, we can splice things and create chimeras and everything else. But you go back 150 years, nobody's doing this. And with all that said, chimpanzees are still procreating. They're procreating chimpanzees. Not once have we seen anything becoming something else because of the DNA molecular structure. So that's mysterious to many scientists because they realize this just didn't, appear in some primordial slime someplace. It had to have come from somewhere. But of course, the God of the Bible and what we read in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So we can believe that, which is the Word, which is the truth, in my opinion, the Word of God, Jesus. Colossians says he's before all things and he holds all things together. He's before all things and he holds all things together. So, and then you've got all the hundreds of prophecies that stack up in the biblical prophetic narrative, which point anybody with a serious study mindset to study the Word has to come away with okay, something's going on here that I don't understand because it's supernatural. It is supernatural, and all those prophecies lead up, and then the whole idea of Jesus and the price he pays for us and the Shroud of Turin. I mean, it's the deepest thing you could possibly ever study on this planet is the Word of God. And I've been doing this for 44 years. In some ways, I've just scratched the surface. So circling back to the whole UFO phenomenon, that's what's manifesting. Now, the late Jim Tetlow and I used to go back and forth 20 years ago. Jim's idea was it was going to be a Marian apparition false flag that would create the Great Deception. And I said, Jim, I'm not buying that. I believe part of it. I believe it's not either or. It might be both and. The whole Marian apparition thing may kind of dovetail into this, but this is what's manifesting in ways that we've never seen, is the whole UFO phenomenon, to the point where in the halls of Congress, we are talking about it. So it's no longer, fringe. Your government. So let me put it to you this way. It's no longer what L.A. Marzulli says or thinks. You can just forget about me. It doesn't matter. Even though I've been waving my arm for 30 years, your government, the United States government, is telling you that the phenomenon is real, burgeoning, and not going away. Maybe not in those exact words. That's a phrase I coined. But the bottom line is it's real. And this is why Congress is investigating it to try to get to the bottom of, do we have crashed craft? Do we have bodies from the craft? What does our military know? Who's accountable for any of this? And of course, that gets into the whole deep state and this whole dark shadow government.
Right. Now, you had something very interesting, because we, on previous shows, and when you're talking about the different rungs of disclosure, you're talking about how all of a sudden in the news, they're talking about, oh, we're seeing UFOs, for instance, like we've discussed this before on Tucker Carlson when he on his program and he interviewed different people. But you answered something that why, Tucker? Why was that? And we are going to get to giants appearing, and we are going to get to how they are predictive programming, even with the Super Bowl and a lot more. But why did they start with that with Tucker?
This is conjecture on my part, and when I get into this, people go, "Well, that sounds like a conspiracy." Well, it may be. I don't know, but why choose Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson's audience was, when he was on Fox News, predominantly conservative Christian. I mean, I think that's a fair statement. And so they floated the whole, what I call the first rung on the ladder of disclosure. Commander David Fravor appears on Tucker Carlson's show. Now, I don't know who set that interview up, how it was set up, who called whom on the phone to set it up. But, David Fravor, Commander David Fravor, at that time, to the best of my knowledge, did not have a book. He was, and he's the best of the best of the best. There's no doubt about it. Man's record is impeccable. Former F-18 pilot. I mean, the guy was like the best of the best. I mean, an F-18 is not a sports car. The F-18 costs millions of dollars, and it goes really, really fast and can do all sorts of stuff that if you and I were in that thing, we'd be going, "You've got to be kidding me." I mean, this thing is a rocket. Basically, it's a rocket, and the maneuverability of it and what it's able to do is astounding. You just don't sign up in the Air Force and fly an F-18. It just doesn't work that way. You work your way up, and this is why it's the best of the best of the best. It's a very select group of people who get to fly this type of aircraft. And Commander David Fravor's record, as far as I know, is absolutely impeccable. So Commander David Fravor's on Tucker, and it begs the question, who picks up the phone and why now? Why 2017? Why December of 2017 does this happen? And what's interesting, in our very first film in the UFO series, I want to thank my business partner, Gil Zimmerman. We finished all these up last year, actually this year, and it's now in the 10-box set. Commander David Fravor in 2017 said that he had an encounter with this tic-tac-shaped object. That was the beginning, the first rung on the ladder of disclosure. So we interviewed this gentleman, and he basically stated on the record that in his opinion, before, he said this year, 2016, okay, or certainly by the end of next year, 2017, we would have some sort of disclosure. Paul McGuire. This is what Paul McGuire was saying. Real smart guy. So, yeah, okay, Paul, I mean, that's an outlandish statement. Guess what? It's exactly what happened. At the end of 2017, December 2017, Commander David Fravor is on Tucker Carlson, and here's the kicker, cut to the chase. Tucker looks right at him and says, in your opinion, what was this? Was it the Chi-Coms? Was it the Russians? Fravor goes, nope, the Russians don't have anything like this. Chi-Coms, nobody's got anything. We don't have anything like this. It shot away like a bullet out of a gun. 50 miles in 2 seconds? Seriously? That's crazy, right? So, and Tucker asked the $64,000 question. In your opinion, what was this? Commander David Fravor looks right at the camera and says this: whatever this was not from this earth. Now, you would think a statement like that would be recapitulated, if I can use that musical term, in every single pulpit in America and elsewhere. Flatlined. Nobody said a word about it. And this is problematic because the church is so asleep and so, 10 steps back and snoozing in the lobby. They have no idea what's going on. Oh, it's all demonic. What does this have to do with salvation? It has nothing to do with salvation. Salvation is the shallow end of the pool, pal. That's where we come in. Salvation. We don't need, as Paul says, we don't need to go back and talk about the rudimentary doctrines of salvation. That's the beginning. Now we move forward into the deep end of the pool, into the deeper things of the spirit. Salvation is important. If you don't know Jesus, you think you know him, but you don't know him, then you don't know him. Ask him into your heart. That's the shallow end of the pool. That's where we get wet. We start to figure out. But the deep end of the pool is the things that Jesus talks about. Be like the days of Noah. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. Paul says, Satan comes with all signs and lying wonders. That's the deep end of the pool. We are here. We are absolutely here. That statement from Commander David Fravor led to the book. It's on my desk somewhere. I don't need to show it to you, but it talked about, disclosure of a 70-year-old cover-up exposed. Finally, after 70 years of this deliberate obfuscation by our government, finally, some of the truth comes out. And remember, on Tucker, they had the tic-tac-shaped UFO and also the gimbal. They were showing the gimbal going against the wind. I mean, it's right there. So it's no longer the stuff of coast to coast. And look, George Norrie's great guy. I mean, I've met him, been on his show a gazillion times.
Right, but why Tucker? But why was it? Why did you why did Tucker keep on having these different people, explaining, okay, aliens, and I mean, why were they disclosing it on him?
I
On
think
his
that Tucker as a journalist, first of all, and he stated this on the record, that in his opinion, he thinks it's the most important story that he in his lifetime. And he's right, it is. It's the most important story ever, because are we looking at extraterrestrials or interdimensional entities? Are these friendly space aliens, our space brothers, or do they have a very nefarious agenda, which leads, in fact, to the Great Deception? In my opinion, it is the latter all day long. These are, look, I'm quoting Jacques Vallée, a ufologist. I've never met the man. I would love to. I sent him an email years ago, didn't get a response, and I understand that. That's fine. But his book, Messengers of Deception, is a must read. These entities, and I said this way back over 25 years ago in the very first book published by Zondervan at the time. We have the rights back to it, the Nephilim trilogy. 3 books. It's all fiction, but it's based on lots of research. And I stated in that book, why come millions and millions of light years away or whatever to tell us that Jesus isn't God? Why not give us the cure to cancer? Now, they've had plenty of time to do that, right? If they're really that advanced, if they really care so much about us, right, then instead of abducting people and implanting them and draining all the blood out of cattle to make artificial wombs and doing all this cat and mouse crazy game stuff and shutting down the nuclear sites and all this other stuff, why not do something productive for humanity? Why not give us the cure to cancer? If you're that flippin' smart, then you should be able to give us the cure to cancer. Oh, no, we don't get that. We get abduction after abduction after abduction. We get the mingling of the seed, Daniel 2:43. These are not benevolent space brothers who seeded us here millions of years ago. They are nefarious interdimensional entities. They are messengers of deception. They have a horrific agenda, and they will set up the one world religious government. The one world religious system and the one world global government, which, by the way, is prophesied in the guidebook of the supernatural, i.e., our Bibles.
Right, which, when you were talking about why a lot of churches like avoid all of this, well, a lot of churches don't even talk about the end times anymore. So there's that. But I thought it was interesting when you were saying, as far as why Tucker, because most Christian conservatives don't believe in life outside of Earth. But I believe that this is just going to deceive even more Christians, because first of all, I'm hearing, believe it or not, I'm hearing some Christians say, you know what, there is life, on other planets, and you know what, we're going to end up witnessing to them, and they'll get saved. I'm telling you, I've been hearing some, yeah, right. And then of course the Catholic Church, we've heard the Pope saying, well, we're going to baptize them. So I mean, there's something really, really up now. Can you show about the Super Bowl and explain all that, because this is very recent. This was in 2024, and with the predictive programming. Can you explain all of that?
This is called Hello Down There. It was run in the 2024 Super Bowl halftime show, I believe, but it's 1 minute and 30 seconds long. Super Bowl ads cost millions and millions and millions of dollars, and the production value on this is through the roof. Look at the extras, look at the shots, look at the zoom shots, look at the graphics. I mean, this is millions of dollars that they spent on this thing. In my opinion, it's predictive programming all day long. Watch what this does, and then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
Reports of flying saucers are nothing new.
These are routine sightings, not isolated events.
Are you seeing that? It's spinning. There's a whole swarm of them. Oh, my God. They're all against the wind. All against the wind. Oh, look at this. That's 110, 150.
There was an historic hearing today on Capitol Hill and an unprecedented bipartisan push for UFO transparency.
とにかくまず今日はタマカについてクリエイティブでビューティフルなコラボレーションをしている。
We must make immediate contact.
I tell you to take Broadway. This always happens.
So everybody's on their goofy cell phone. Go to the airports. I mean, we're at the airport 2 or 3 times a month.
Yeah, slave
We
to it.
fly all over the place. Everybody's like this. They're on their stupid iPhones all day long. Everybody's looking down. So, the woman is seeing, historic thing on extraterrestrials, blah, blah, blah. She doesn't want to see that. She scrolls over to the cat clawing the toilet paper. That makes her happy. What they're saying here is the little diner in New Mexico or Texas, New York City, Paris, France, and Japan. It's a global event. That's what they're telling us. At the very end, you get a website makes it real, Squarespace. You get that for less than 5 seconds. I mean, you don't even know what they're advertising, for crying out loud, right? This is deliberate. This is predictive programming. This is the coming great deception. And you'll notice it's a global event. It's more than one disc. And when people look up, that disc that's blocking out the sky, it's over the skyscrapers. It's at least, a half a mile wide, a mile wide. I mean, who knows? It's really, really big, and it's global. It's global. And that's what they're telling us, that this is what's coming. This is predictive programming. They're telegraphing it to us. And like, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. No, it's not. And everybody laughs at it. And at the very end, Scorsese, I told you to take Broadway. This always happens. It's like, no, Martin, it doesn't always happen. It's never happened. And so you're part of the problem because you've been hired to create this. And that's, it shows the little boy. That's Martin probably as a little boy watching, take us to your leader type of thing. So he's like involved in this. He directed it. You're looking at buku bucks for this thing. For what? A website makes it real? Squarespace? Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? And so this is, in my opinion, that's conspiracy theories. It's not. This is predictive programming. They are telling us exactly what's about to happen. And in the book, Rungs of Disclosure, I lay out what I believe the events are which will trigger it. I was on someone's show the other day, and really interesting. The gentleman was saying, well, LA, it's God sends them strong delusion. So it has nothing to do with Satan. So I said, well, I respectfully, I disagree. And we were about to go on a break. So I was on my computer. I went immediately to my concordance, biblical concordance, and I looked up will send 2 Thessalonians. And it means to send, to transmit. It also can mean permit to go, permit to go. And so after the break, I told him, I said, well, I mean, we can argue this, but one of the translations of God sends them strong delusion is God permits them to go. And we know this in that same passage that he who restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. So in my opinion, the restrainer is removed and God permits them finally to do the delusion because they did not believe the truth. And what is the truth? What is the truth? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was with God in the beginning. The beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created by him, and without him was not anything made that was not made. I mean, there it is. Jesus speaks everything into existence. He holds all things together. Laminin is the substance that holds everything in the universe together as we know it. It's in the shape of a cross with a DNA double helix coming out of it. And if you were to remove laminin, everything would just completely collapse. The universe as we know it. And this leads me into the book of Revelation, where we know Jesus comes riding in, out of his mouth comes a sharp sword. He will strike the nations. And that's when he comes down, right? With the armies of heaven. I do not believe that we're lopping off heads. I don't think it's that type of an entanglement. I really don't. The armies of heaven come down. All he does All Jesus does is he stops holding them together. I think he gives them one last chance, maybe, that's conjecture, where he goes, are you sure you want to be on that side? Those of you who repent, come forward. No one comes forward. All he does is he stops holding everybody together. They bleed out. They just bleed out right there on the battlefield of Armageddon. No one's lopping off heads like Lord of the Rings. He just stops holding them together. They bleed out. There's your prophecy fulfilled. Blood going up to the bridle.
That makes more sense than what other people have said. So,
Right.
yeah. All right, LA, in the Super Bowl spot, I found it interesting that they also showed elongated skull entity.
Yes.
And of course,
Yes.
you have those in the background.
Yes.
Now some people who have seen you on my program who didn't know about how you've gone to like Peru and all these different places of
Right.
seeing these giant skulls. Okay, but you broke the story of a giant that was in Afghanistan, and you had threats against you from a government agent. Can you just tell that whole story? Because I think, and there's people have been seeing giants. So yeah, can you explain that story about the Afghanistan?
This was circa 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. Richard Shaw and I did a film where a gentleman who was in the armed forces came on the record and stated that he killed a giant at least 12 feet tall in Afghanistan. Since then, we've had other people. So we had two witnesses in the film, the shooter and a gentleman who was also stationed in the Kandahar province at the one base. And the rumor was around, everyone knew about it, but you weren't supposed to talk about it. So we have two witnesses. So, the powers that be can stand up and jump up and down and tell us that we're making this stuff up. Since then, I had another witness, and I won't say anything more than he's just another witness. He or she is just another witness. And this person basically stated that we talk shop off the record for probably a half an hour. We just talk shop. And this person knew stuff that only I knew and vice versa. So it corroborated the story. 3. 4, I had a gentleman on my show on YouTube whose grandmother was a witch at the Kandahar province, at the same place where the Giant's Cave was. And she, as a witch, would take goats and stake them out so the giants would stay there and not bother the village. Now, what do you do with that? There's 4 witnesses. They're all lying. They're all lying. So I was in Dallas. There were death threats against me. There was in the parking lot, there was a elevated platform where, with the house on top of it, like a scissors lift. So it goes up and it gives the policeman up there complete view of the parking lot. I had 2 plainclothesmen follow me the entire weekend while I was there because of the death threats. And then I had a guy from the deep state who flashed his badge and told me that the reason why he was here was because of our work on the Kandahar Giant. And he threatened me 3 different ways. The first way he threatened me was, what kind of cell phone do you have? Well, I have an iPhone. Is it encrypted? No, it's not. Well, they can find on that when they come to arrest you, which is why I go public with this. You're welcome to look at my phone anytime. I never have and never will. That's an abomination. That's evil. That is so evil. It's ridiculous. So that's the first threat. The second threat is, what kind of car do you drive? At that time, I drove a 1990 Mercedes-Benz SL 500, which I bought for $8,000 and restored. Love the car. It's a go-kart. So he said, well, we can make it so the car can have an accident like that.
Wait. What year was your car again?
It was a 1990 Mercedes SL 500. So at that time, it's already like, 25 years or 30 years old or whatever. I mean, it's old, 25 years old.
Wait a minute. Okay, I'm sorry. I've got to park here for a second. Nobody would have thought they had any technology to do anything with a car that old.
No, but they had a computer in it.
Even from back
It
then.
did
Okay.
had a 1990 had a computer.
Okay, go on. I'm so sorry.
Burned in the fire, so I upgraded to a 2005 Mercedes-Benz SL 500, which I paid I think $12,000 for. It had like 68,000 miles. It's just such a great car to drive. It's a go-kart. So people, he drives a Mercedes Benz. Well, how much did you spend on your goofy F-150 Ford pickup truck? 40 grand, right? I spent $12,000. So let's and up here in the Santa Monica Mountains, I mean, it's the car of choice. And every time I'm in there, I'm digressing here, but I mean, I love the car. It's an adventure. For those of you who love automobiles, and I got this from Richard Shaw and my friend Bob Ulrich, they were the ones that ushered me into a love of fast cars. I used to drive a goofy station wagon. I could care less. And Richard, I guess I'll tell you the story. So we're going to film somebody for our Watchers series, and I'm in Richard's Jaguar. I'm in Richard's Jaguar, and we're going down the 405, and I'm in the passenger seat, and Rick is like weaving in and out of traffic the way Rick would do. And I'm sitting there going like, you're really a good driver. And he goes, thanks, LA. And I go, and this car is like incredibly comfortable. Wow. And I'm just like, just kind of, and Rick bought it used for, I think, I don't know, 10 grand or something. It was just this old Jaguar, but it was meticulously kept in garage. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and I go, wow, what have I been missing all these years? So, between Bob Ulrich's love of cars and Richard's, you can buy these things, you can pick them up for pennies on the dollar. No way I can afford a new one, but you can get a used one. And my 2005, be 20 years old, but I baby that thing and I love it. But I digress.
Right, because we got to find out about why they asked about your car. So
that was the second threat. The third threat was, do you have any children? Yes, I have 2 girls. Well, one of them could go missing and never be found again. So this guy's threatened me 3 times, and I have a witness to this. I have an armed bodyguard right next to me. And I go, yeah, you can do that. I'm a worm. You can crush me like a bug, but you can't do anything unless the Most High God allows it. It was like a punch in the guy's stomach. He took a step back. He'd never heard that before. And not because I'm so bold and daring. I'm not. I'm not that way at all. I'm a musician. I'm not a warrior. I didn't sign up for the army. I detest violence and all that stuff. I just, I recoil from it. But I will defend my family and the story. And I'm prepared to do that. So about a month and a half, 2 months later, I'm driving in the 1990 go-kart up one of the canyons. I'm making a sharp left turn. I'm doing about 55, 60 miles an hour. All of a sudden I hear poop like this. And what's that? This all happens, as you're doing 55, 60, the car is moving very quickly. He's moving 50 feet, in 2 seconds or whatever it is, very quickly. And to the right is a precipitous drop like this. And I realize I no longer have control of the steering wheel, that the power steering is gone. And I'm kind of going like, what's going on? So anyway, I'm headed towards the cliff. I jam on the brakes and turn the wheel and skid to a stop. I turn off the motor, pop the hood, see what the timing belt is gone. It's no longer there. It's wrapped around the engine. And I call AAA. Half an hour later, AAA shows up. And I take a timing belt like this and I show it to the driver. And I go, what does this look like to you? He takes it from me and looks at it and he goes, do you have any enemies? The belt was cut in 3 different places.
Did they do that whole thing remotely? Did they do that? I mean,
I don't know.
Because the thing that is kind of really, really strange about that too is that to me, it seems like it was timed because all of a sudden you're near a cliff. So this is not just like, okay, we did it. Now he's driving for a while. I mean, to me, it was timed.
It's almost like somebody's going click. I don't know. I mean, and maybe it wasn't cut. Maybe the belt was just worn.
No, you had a threat right before that. No.
I mean, why would the guy say that? Why would the guy take it and go, do you have any enemies? It was cut in 3 different places. So,
But they were basically trying to stop you from talking about that giant that was seen in Afghanistan.
Correct.
Okay, LA, can you just describe though what that giant looked like, the one in Afghanistan? I mean, how tall was he about? How many fingers? I mean, what did he look like?
Yeah. According to the shooter, it was 12 to 14 feet. The stench was unbearable. I mean, absolutely unbearable. 6 fingers, 6 toes, red hair, double rows of teeth. It's a Nephilim. And here's the deal. The Nephilim are the progeny of fallen angels and human women. So the question is this: how old is that? We don't know. It could be thousands of years old. It could be because it's angelic DNA is immortal. So what do we have? This is the problem. We don't know. According to the giant, according to the soldier, the gentleman who came on the record, it was flown out in a big helicopter, and years later, another gentleman contacted me who worked at this secret government facility, allegedly, and was going to meet me in Dallas again. And we never heard back from him. He just disappeared. I had another gentleman come up to me in Dallas again at the Hear the Watchman conferences. This is different years. And he came up and someone was speaking on stage. So the way it was, the stage was here, and then we're back here against the wall. So there's a good space where the crowd is, the stage, and then all the vendors. So we're in the back wall. This guy comes up to me, introduces himself, and basically says, I can't come on the record, but I'm active duty. I go, well, what's going on? And he basically tells me that he landed with his helicopter, and he was immediately promoted to a different rank, higher rank, and also given a higher security clearance. And then he was told to take this object, which was on a pallet, and take it to this destination. And I said, was it biological? He said, yes. I said, was it a giant? And he just looked at me and he went, and he backed away, disappeared into the crowd, never saw him again.
Yeah.
They're there, Janie. They're there.
Well, you also explained about the giant scene in Israel. Can you explain that?
Yeah, Barry Chalmers, this is years ago. This is like 26 years ago, 25 years ago. It's like 1999. My first book, Nephilim, has been published by Zondervan. And a friend of mine goes, hey, this guy Barry Chalmers is in your wheelhouse. He's got a book called Nephilim, the Giants, of Israel. And he's an Israeli reporter. And he's speaking down at a UFO conference. So I go down there and I listen to his presentation, and then I go up to him and I hold up my book like this, and his jaw drops. And we struck up this conversation, and we were emailing each other and talking, and then he passed away. He was an investigative reporter. He had been to the sites where people had seen the giants in Israel. He'd seen the footprints, giant footprints, fresh footprints with his own eyes. And this is why he wrote his book. Now, I used to have it in my library. My library is no longer here. It burned to me in the 2018 fire. This is the 6-year anniversary, by the way. So, yeah. But, Barry Chalmers was an investigative reporter from Israel and wrote a book on this and said he didn't understand the way I understand about the Nephilim. He got some of it, but not all of it. All he said was, according to the Tanakh, because they don't have the New Testament, obviously. According to the Tanakh and Torah, it was always bad. Wherever the Nephilim were, was very bad for Israel. So he looked at it as a dark omen, a dark sign.
Now that's very interesting because also, because you this whole series, the book and the 10, the disclosure, UFO disclosure. I mean, you talk about like mounds and different manifestations. What's interesting, and it's like around in the Middle East and around Israel, there seems to be all of these like megalithic or mounds And it's just like, I just feel like that they're really concentrated in that area. Of course, you've seen them, South America too. I mean, I know that they're probably all over the place, but this seems even more concentrated in the Middle East. What do you think?
Well, there's a diaspora as Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of Canaan. All right, the Nephilim tribes that are there begin to flee, and there's a westward diaspora. There's no doubt. The Roman historian Procopius saw this stele on the north shores of Africa and wrote about it. And it says, "We are they who fled from the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun." What's that doing on the coast of North Africa? Who are these people who fled from the face of Joshua, the robber, the son of Nun? They're Nephilim tribes. Thor Heyerdahl, and it's in our very first film, Mysterious Mound Builders, we show a clip that Thor Heyerdahl is in a papyrus boat. It's a replica of what was used thousands of years ago by the Phoenicians, papyrus boat. He sets the sail. So he's already gone through the Mediterranean. That's given. We know that papyrus boats from the Phoenicians were all over the Mediterranean, no doubt about it. But now he's at the Strait of Gibraltar. He puts up the sail, no map, no compass, nothing. He just allows the trade winds to blow him to see where he's going to go. He winds up on the island of Barbados in the New World without doing doodly squat, without even knowing where he's going. He winds up on the island of Barbados in the New World. He proved that the Phoenicians could have been over here. The Nephilim tribes could have gone over here, which is exactly what we see. Interestingly enough, the giants are all over the South, all over Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, all the Tick Island. We actually showed that in the film. We interviewed the man who's passed away. He was a little boy when they were out on Tick Island with his family digging, and they saw giants 9, 10, 12 feet tall, skeletons. And when they told the archaeologist, he wasn't interested in that. In the film, we show an elongated skull on Tick Island, just like this. It's not a giant, but it's elongated skull. So the archaeologists, there were two schools of thought in archaeological circles. One is isolationism, which is what the predominant view is. And that is nobody goes anywhere, nobody does anything, nobody is curious, they're isolationists. Your tribe stays within a boundary. Don't go over there. It's the forbidden zone. You'll be eaten alive and killed. Don't do it. Don't sail down that river to see where it might go. So their idea is that things change very, very slowly over millennia of time, and people are isolationists. My view, and that of two of the archaeologists three of the archaeologists, Heather Coons, Mondo Gonzalez, and of course Rick Woodward, who's also an anthropologist. But all four of us believe in diffusionism, which is exactly the opposite of isolationism. We believe that people are curious and people go. They go. They diffuse. They spread out. They go down the river to see where it goes. And if they don't come back, who cares? Maybe they're adopted by another tribe. They don't care. And then 20 years later, they show back up. You guys can't believe where I've been for 20 years. It's been amazing. That's what we believe. And so cultures, see, this is why when you go, and it's in our film, On the Trail of the Nephilim, we did 2 films on America's Stonehenge. When you go there and you find a stone they did years ago in a collapsed chamber, and this stone was buried about 2 feet under the ground, and it had writing on it, and they didn't know what the writing said. So they put it in their museum. It sat there for 11 years till Professor Barry Fell from Harvard University showed up, looked at it and said, I think I can translate it. It looks like Iberian Punic. And this is what it says: to Baal of the Canaanites in dedication. So if that's a hoax, it sits there for 11 years. Oh, they made millions off of that. Nobody made any money off of that. So what's this hoax? To Baal of the Canaanites in dedication? Dennis Stone, they didn't even know what they had. They knew nothing about the Nephilim, nothing. So I took them to school. It's in the film. And I mean, when all this happened, I mean, I just sat there with my jaw on the ground. When Kelsey Stone said, This is one of the stones that we found with writing in a collapsed chamber. This is a whole other discussion. The fact that the site was deserted. We see this wherever I go, Janie, from South America to Teotihuacan, Mexico, to Chaco Canyon, to the Great Octagon and Circle Mountain in Ohio, to the Standing Stones in France, to what we see in Portugal, to the UK monuments, to what's in Ireland, to Gilgal Raphaim, to Sardinia, to Mallorca, all the places we've been, it's the same story. Well, we don't know what happened to these people. We just think that they abandoned the site due to climate change and assimilated with the rest of the population. This is the biggest line of hooey that's ever been fed, and it's this way. It's repeated endlessly, no matter where you go. The fact is, nobody knows what happened to the inhabitants of these places. The sites seem to have been deliberately closed, and that leads to a whole other conversation.
Well, again, I find it very odd that people have and military have seen these giants. And now, did you say not on this program, but I've heard you say before, like some of them appear and disappear, or people have seen some entities appearing and disappearing?
According to one witness that I spoke, who engaged with these things, they had the ability to go like this, appear and disappear, and then appear again. So they're here, they disappear, and then they appear over here, that type of thing.
Now you see, but now what is that footage I saw that you had of them appearing, something appearing?
That is Scott Carpenter's video, and he's passed away now. He's no longer with us. Very young. That's another discussion. Scott would walk in the wilderness looking for Sasquatch. He would have a camera with its lens pointing behind him like this. So, and it would be hidden. So he's got a backpack on, there's the camera, and it's pointing behind him. So as we showed the video on our YouTube channel, all of a sudden you see a perfect circle appear on the path, a perfect circle like this. And in that middle of that circle is an entity on one knee with an elongated skull. And it's coming in. It's coming in like this.
Well, okay, now back to the different rungs, because I know we've talked about the congressional hearings before. We've talked about that 15th rung, but can you explain a conversation that you had with who you just call Osprey? Because you had this conversation with him or her, whoever Osprey is, before this disclosure started happening with the congressional hearings. Can you explain some of the discussion you had? Because to me, it was very eye-opening.
Well, this particular person, they don't give me anything that's classified. So we're not doing, I'm not getting information that's classified. This person won't do that. But this person will sort of steer me and say, look at this, look at that, look at this. There is a deep state. This is the whole UFO phenomenon is a very closely guarded secret. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And the idea that Congress is trying to look into it, but it's essentially a nothing burger. They get so far and they can't penetrate that wall of secrecy. They can't. They don't even know who to ask. There was a clip that one of the rungs on the ladder, which didn't make it into the book, but it's one of the latter ones. It'll be on the website once I finally get to that. It's Anna Paulina Luna in Congress, and it was the whole clip was on Fox News, and all these people were coming out of the hearing. Nothing happened. It was a big nothing burger. We got nowhere. And Anna Paulina Luna is saying, we need to listen to what David Grush is saying. David Grush is saying that these entities are interdimensional. So and the reporter goes, well, interdimensional, what does that mean? And she sort of explains it the best she can. So, Tim Burkett, Christian, looking at all this stuff with the UFOs, realizing that he can't get to the truth either. He comes out of that hearing and goes, we got nowhere. And so the powers that be have the ability to stonewall everything. And this is why it's no longer a government. I'm quoting, one of the representatives comes out of that closed door hearing and says, yeah, we got nowhere. This is no longer our country. We just get to live here. This is a representative. This isn't L.A. Marzulli saying that. This is one of our duly elected representatives stating on the record that we got nowhere. We got no information. We just get to live in this country. It's no longer our country. We don't control anything. And this is the whole idea of a deep state and the shadow government. I mean, it is real. It does exist. It's been in that place since World War II and parts of it even before that, going back to the whole, Jekyll Island stuff with the Federal Reserve and then the income taxes. And none of this was here. We didn't have this before World War I. And people go, well, how can you run a government? Well, we did it for over 100 years, right? Before all this took place. And that's why it's so interesting when Trump starts talking about maybe abolishing the income tax. I mean, let me just go down a rabbit trail because this really irks me. So I paid into Social Security all my life. So I've already paid taxes on that money. Okay, I've already paid taxes on it. But now when I get my Social Security check, I get to pay taxes on that again. I mean, this is how unfair the whole system is. You would think when you turn 65, they'd go, thanks for putting into the system all these years. No more property tax for you. No more income tax for you. You're a legitimate senior. You put your time in. You've been a good citizen. No traffic records, nothing on your record. You've been a stand-up guy. No income tax, no property tax, no state tax. Enjoy your retirement. But that's not what they do. They just put the screws to you all the time.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Never enough. It's
right.
never enough.
Right. Yeah. And then, and also, by the way, thanks for giving the money because we're going to give it to illegals and pay for their housing and everything. But
isn't that unbelievable?
Don't get me started on that, or else I'll just,
Oh, I know. Me too. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It absolutely is. But okay, there's something I want to go back to though, because I had found this interesting when you had talked about Osprey. Just that this is like, because this was before the congressional hearings where they did reveal stuff like, and you talk about this with your 15th rung, and they do say that these are non-human biologics that were recovered. I mean, I know that they're regulating what should be said and what should not be said, but that all happened. That was 2023. But when you had the conversation with Osprey, he was kind of warning you that they would start with these congressional hearings and start revealing more information. So I found that interesting. Now, another wrong that you've talked about is the fourth wrong, which is the off-world vehicles. Can you explain that one?
Well, I mean, when a whistleblower from the Pentagon comes forward and says, we have off-world vehicles not made on this earth, as a ufologist, I've known about this for decades. I mean, how many reports do we have to have, deathbed confessions from people who were at Roswell, who saw the disc, and the disc was shipped to Wright Pat? I mean, you got we show this in the film on Roswell that, is in our 10-box set. We show it. But Gemma Ramey's got a telegram in his hand, and David Rudiak was able to zoom in on that, and computer graphics able to analyze and see what he's got. Disc, bodies retrieved, Wright Pat. So the disc was retrieved, the bodies were shipped to Wright Pat, and the rest is history. Then we've got the deathbed affidavit from Walter G. Haught, who was stationed at Roswell, and he had a deathbed. He had a legal document prepared, an affidavit, only to be opened after he was died, after he was dead. And in that, he talks about meeting with Gemma Ramey and other officials, handling the wreckage and the whole cover story. And then he's taken the Hangar 84. He sees the disc. He sees the bodies under the tarps. Now that's a deathbed confession. I mean, I've had one gentleman who this year, actually January 2024, came up and told a story about his grandmother who worked at Roswell. And a month before she passed away, he went to see her He's driving around the old Army base. There's nothing left of it. And we were there. We were in Roswell. We actually got into Hangar 84 and we filmed inside Hangar 84. It's in the film. So what was interesting about all this, he's with his grandmother. A month later, she passes away. So this is deathbed time, right? She's going. And he goes, Grandma was, where did they keep the wreckage and the bodies? And without any hesitation, she goes, right there. And they're going by Hangar 84, which is where we got into. And, that's the stuff of lore. But that building looks exactly like it did in 1947 with, of course, repairs and that type of stuff. But it hasn't been upgraded or anything. It looks like it did. And there I am. And you can see it in the film. My mouth was open like, I'm like a kid in the candy store. I can't believe I'm actually standing in Hangar 84. The wreckage was taken there. So we know that there were crash retrieval teams. We know that discs were given to us to back engineer. This is the work of Bob Lazar in the 1990s. So for an ufologist like myself, this is all old news. Lazar broke that story where he talked about back engineering the propulsion system at Area 51. I mean, how many times do we need to see this? Gary Schultz, I used to have the picture. I interviewed Gary, and Gary and his wife Pearl, they're out at the mailbox. You can't get there anymore. The federal government bought all the property, but they're up on this area on a Wednesday night, and they're filming a human alien piloted craft. This thing is flying like this. It's just, you can see it. No wings, no tail, no rotor wash, nothing like that. And that's the work of Gary Schultz, who was out there, decades ago, late 80s, early 90s, before the X-Files, before anybody knew about Area 51. So Gary Schultz broke that story. And I mean, there was a quid pro quo. We gave them access to the population. It's like vampire lore, same old thing. We gave them permission to access the population. They gave us the toys, just like the Book of Enoch.
Right. They gave the technology.
Just like the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, explain that for some people who don't understand that. Right, because this is alien fallen angel technology given to mankind. Explain that.
Yeah, in the Book of Enoch, when the fallen angels come down, they want to gain access to the females, and they have to get permission to access the women, and they give us technology. The different fallen angels show us different things. It's a quid pro quo, which is exactly what we see. How many times do we have to, the days of Noah, the days of Noah, the days of Noah, the days of Noah. And most pastors have no idea, unfortunately, what the days of Noah really entail. Well, it's a flood. Why the flood, sir? You weren't taught that in seminary. You were taught the Sethite theory, which just falls and collapses of its own weight. Genesis 3:15 is the gateway to the biblical prophetic narrative. In the book, I go overboard on making sure that the reader understands that Genesis 3:15 is crucial. Without an understanding of it, you can't get to where we are now. And it's not taught in seminary. And seminarians are said, whatever you do, don't read the Book of Enoch. Jude, who is Jesus' half-brother, quotes from the book of Enoch. Why would he do that? You don't quote from something unless it's part of your wheelhouse. You don't do that, which means this is conjecture that more than likely Jesus' entire household knew the Book of Enoch really well. You keep one book out of the people's hands, the Book of Enoch, because it explains what's going on with the seed war. You keep one passage away from the pastors so they never understand the entire biblical prophetic narrative. Genesis 3:15. I got that from Gary Sturman, who taught on it at the Nephilim Mounds Conference years ago. It changed it was a missing piece in all of our theology, all of our Nephilim studies. And Gary brought that to the table, Gary Sturman. It's all about the seed. And since then, I've been banging that drum ferociously, if I can use that word. And that's why in the book, Rungs of Disclosure, there's a whole chapter on the Genesis 3:15 narrative. Because if we don't get that right, we don't get the rest of the Bible. And here's something to think about. Harvard and Yale used to be bastions of Christian thought. in this country. They are no longer bastions of Christian thought. So how did it change? Well, it's really simple. You just stack the deck with liberal professors who no longer believe in the biblical prophetic narrative, who scoff at it, who poo-poo it and put it down. And 100 years later, this is what you wind up with. Complete anarchy, complete Looney Tunes, socialism, communism. But I digress. Do the same thing with seminaries. Bring in theologians who do not believe in Genesis 3:15, who have an Augustinian theological worldview where there really is no supernatural and angels can't procreate. Oh, that can't possibly happen. Why would God allow that? And so seminarians come out. They're good men. They want to pastor their flock. They love people, but they don't have the key to the biblical narrative, which is Genesis 3:15. Because when you get to the Tower of Babel, what are we looking at? When you get to Abraham and the Nephilim kings that he goes against, let me just read this to you. This will blow your mind. This is Abraham. Where is it now? Hold on. Yeah. Abraham passed through the land of the place Shechem as far as the terebinth tree, and the Canaanites were in the land. Listen to this. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock, the Canaanites and the Perizzites that dwelt in the land. And Abraham goes after the five kings, and it's in the Genesis 6 account, and the Genesis account, and it's mind-boggling because he goes against these guys, and they're all Nephilim. But unless you know the Nephilim, when you get there, you don't know what's going on. When you get to Sodom and Gomorrah, when we read Sodom and Gomorrah, the God of the Bible is from the flood to the Tower of Babel to Abraham to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, finally the conquest of Canaan. Well-meaning men like Richard Dawkins, even though he's a Darwinist, looks at that, and I get it. From his perspective, how can you possibly believe in this genocidal God of the Old Testament who's killing all of these innocent people? Well, they're not innocent, they're soulless, and they're not people, they're hybrid beings who were never supposed to be here, and they have no soul. They have no soul. And the Nephilim who were killed in the flood become the disembodied spirits that wander the earth, i.e. demons. Fallen angels and demons are two totally different entities. Fallen angels are fallen angels. Demons are the progeny of fallen angels and earthly women creating a hybrid known as the Nephilim. See why this is so important? Once we get that, and I got this from my mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. I was a Christian for like 8 or 9 years. I didn't understand what I was reading in the Old Testament. I just figured that the God of the Old Testament was somehow different than Jesus. Jesus I got, totally get it. But this Old Testament God, this guy's a nutcase, man. I'm not getting near him, okay? Because I'll just be turned into a pillar of salt for no reason at all. I'm not buying this.
Right. People would say the angry God.
Angry God. And that's how people view him. And then I read Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book, probably in 1 or 2 sittings. I couldn't put it down because it opened up the gateway to the Bible. It opened up the Genesis 3:15 narrative. It talked about the seed war. It changed my whole life. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I stand on the shoulders of Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. There are 14 books and 30 films that deal with this on some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's a corpus of work. And now we've got this, the 10-box UFO set. And this is what we're looking at. This is the coming great deception. We've got the rungs of disclosure. I mean, how much more of this do we have to do before they show up? And they will show up. And I think we're close.
I think we are so close to LA because of of everything that I read in your book, everything that I see on those DVDs, the headlines now that that commercial that was in the with the Super Bowl and the predictive programming, which people can't think that you're crazy because we see predictive programming always with movies. I mean, we see things happening and they go, I used to think, wow, how did they know? Are they clairvoyant and have some demonic gift that they know the future? I didn't know that they were actually, whatever their plan was, they were putting it into the movies or into this commercial. And they're always telling you what they're about to do. It's part of their cult. But the thing is, you're sounding the alarm. And right now, you know what? I'm sounding it with you more urgently than ever because we both know they are about to pull something to really deceive the world. And in Matthew 24, it says to deceive, if possible, even the elect. And we now know that there's going to be Christians that are going to be deceived. I mean, it's like, come on, you've got to get these materials and get it into the hands of people that you love, that whose eyes are not open, Christian and non-Christian, right?
And I completely concur. There was a woman that had bought. We had a special a while back. You can buy 2 books and get the third one for free to give to your pastor. First one's for you and your household. Second one to give to your best friend. Third one to give to your pastor. So this woman did that, and she gave it to her pastor and said, "Well, I'll try to read it." Next week he comes back and he hands the book back to her and he goes, "I don't read books by men. I only read books by the Holy Spirit." And it's one of the most arrogant, ignorant statements I've ever heard. And I told her, maybe it's time to leave that place, like to run to the nearest exit. And this is problematic because you get these guys and they haven't been taught Genesis 3:15, so they're ignorant and they're arrogant. They think they know. Well, I'm the pastor of this church, blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of good pastors out there. That's why I'm not saying anyone who invites L.A. Marzulli to their church is a good pastor. There are many good pastors who I'll never meet and never speak at their church, but they're warning their flock about what's going on. Maybe they've seen Tom Horn's work or my work or other people's work about this, and they realize that, oh my gosh, I need to tell my people what's going on, and so they do. But the vast majority of pastors and churches don't talk about anything. We don't want to, offend anybody. Excuse me. Your kids and your grandkids are already watching Ancient Aliens every stinking week. It's time to pull the covers. Look, there was one church here where I live in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I gave the book UFO Disclosure to the worship leader. And the next week we pulled into the parking lot, and they were all laughing at us. They were all laughing at me, making fun. And I just said, okay, I get it. And we never went back, and we never will. Ignorance and arrogance is a very deadly combination. So yeah. And this is where we are.
Right.
I'll just say this. I live in Southern California. I've been invited one time to speak in the last 20 years, 2 times in the last 20 years, 2 times in the last 20 years.
You mean in your area?
My area. There are thousands of churches in this area. 2 times in 20 years. And I even threatened last year, I will come to your church for free, for a love offering. I'll come to your church for free. If you're in driving distance, 2-hour driving distance, I'll come to your church for free. So we did. We went to this one church, and I spoke on Friday all day Saturday and did a Q&A. So, we made, and I'll make that same promise, I mean, you would think, right? You would think. I was on Eric Metaxas show yesterday, and he had me on for over an hour, and he wants me back. And I'm not dropping names, but what I loved about that interview, like you, he realized that something's going on, and this book gave him the answers. He really plugged the book like crazy, just like you are. This book gave him the answers, and people are waking up, which is fantastic in my opinion. Janie, I've done my work.
Oh, you sure have.
I mean, there are 10 films in this. We're the only Christian ministry that have 10 films on the UFO phenomena, and all these books and everything else. I mean, I can't do any more than what we've done. And we speak, we're doing lectures, and we offer great deals to try to get the word out, like we're doing with you. We're partnering up with you guys. But this is the coming great deception. We're on the cusp of it, in my opinion, and I think it's sooner than later. But we'll see.
I totally agree, but it's really scary because to me, these churches that you're talking about, how many churches are going to be totally deceived? And you know what, Ellie, I know that you've explained it, but can you just explain it fast for some people who just explained the Genesis 3, that whole of the seed war, just so for someone just to get it in a nutshell.
The Genesis 3:15 passage. You've got Adam and Eve over here. They've just sided with the dragon. They know something really traumatic has happened. They are terrified. That's why they're hiding from the Lord. They are terrified. So you got Adam and Eve over here. Over here, you've got the dragon, Hasatan, Satan, the snake, the Nakash, the shining one. In the center, you've got Jesus, the pre-incarnate Christ, who says to the dragon, your offspring, your seed. Now, you can tap dance around that and do the Texas two-step all you want, but you can't, because what it says is your offspring, your seed, will be at war with the seed, the offspring of the woman. The proto-evangelium, the one, the Messiah, coming from the woman, will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. It's the entire Bible, Janie. That's it. If we don't get that, we don't understand anything else that's going on. The whole Bible, it's like looking at it through a colored lens where you can see the words, but you really can't read what's there. And that's exactly what this is. Because when you get to Noah's flood, and I got there 44 years ago when I first became a Christian, and my Lord Holy Spirit said, now pick up that Bible and start reading, son. So I'm reading Genesis, and I get to the flood of Noah, and I go, what? Why is it? Now, I knew about the flood of Noah, but I never read about it. And I'm 30 years old reading it really for the first time. And I'm kind of going like, wait a minute. Who is this guy? You know, why is he destroying? What did they do? What was so bad? And you're not told. All you're told is that Nephilim are on the earth. That's it. And they expect you to know who the Nephilim are, but most people don't. And I certainly didn't. It'd be another 10 years or 8, 9 years before I would get Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book, which changed my life completely. So that pronunciation, the offspring. So anyone who tells you that angels can't procreate, point them at Genesis 3:15. Then what are we looking at? Your offspring, Jesus says it, your seed, your offspring will be at war with the offspring of the woman. He, the proto-evangelium, the Mashiach, the Messiah, will crush your head, you'll bruise his heel. It's the entire Bible. It's the entire Bible.
Absolutely.
Get that, and the whole thing opens up.
Right. And to me, it totally explains end time prophecy. Can you explain the special offer for my listeners?
Folks, we're partnering with Janie and her ministry, and I love doing this because it gets the word out. But we've got a special here, and it's only available for those who watch this particular interview. In other words, the fans of Janie's show. So we love doing this. We love partnering it up with her, and we're sharing the profits here to help her ministry, and of course, it helps ours. So here's the special. Please check it out. Pray about it. Consider supporting Janie, and you're also supporting us at the same time. So it's a great offer, and here's how to get it.
Well, Ellie, thank you so much for that, and just thank you so much for being on the program.
Always great to see you. Always great to be here, and thanks for believing in what we do. We believe in what you do, and God bless you.
God bless you too.